Do you ever remember the exact shade of blue someone's shirt was, but completely forget why you walked into a room? Or maybe you can recite a really complex scientific fact, word for word, but then struggle to remember the main point of a conversation. If you're autistic, this probably feels very familiar. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating parts of the autistic brain: how we can remember tiny details with incredible clarity, but sometimes struggle with the so called big picture. This isn't a flaw, it's a different way of remembering. Before we go any further, if this kind of content resonates with you, please hit like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell. It really helps the channel and our community grow. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about this different memory system. Autistic memory doesn't work on interest neutral mode. For many of us, interest is the switch. If something is generally interesting to me, I'm like a sponge. I can absorb everything, and I could give you a full TED talk complete with references. But if something doesn't interest me, it doesn't matter how important it is, how many times I read it, or how hard I try, it just doesn't stick. And this showed up very clearly for me in high school. In high school, I hated math, but here's the thing: math has formulas, you follow steps, so you can work it out. So even though I didn't enjoy it, my brain could latch onto the structure. I ended up with a B in math. Now compare that to human biology. Human bio is memory-based: reading, memorizing, recalling, and even though it probably should have interested me, it just didn't. I just remember how my classmates would say human bio was the easiest class and you could just cruise through it, while I'm sitting at my desk thinking, like, what? I would read a page and remember nothing. Read it again, still nothing. Read it over and over, genuinely trying to make it stick, and it wouldn't. My grade for human bio, well, it was a B. Just kidding, it was a D. One grade off a fail, and I felt so dumb. But what I know now is that it wasn't from laziness, it wasn't from the lack of effort. That was an autistic brain that couldn't encode information without interest or sensory hooks. Now let's look at sensory superfocus and detail memory. When autistic brains are interested, though, that's where the magic happens. We often have heightened sensory processing, which means sounds can be richer, visuals more vivid, and details more precise. So when something enters our brain with emotional or sensory relevance, it can be stored in incredible detail. I can remember specific moments from my past: what the room looked like, what someone was wearing, even how the air felt. But ask me what I ate for lunch yesterday, absolutely no idea. And that's not forgetfulness, it's selective interest-driven memory encoding. So what about the elusive big picture when context gets lost? While details stick, context can slip, especially in conversations. You might remember the exact words someone used, the tone of one sentence, or a random detail that stood out, but miss the underlying message, the emotional intention, or the unspoken meaning. This can be linked to things like theory of mind and cognitive load. If your brain is already working hard to decode tone, facial expressions, and subcontext, there's not much capacity left to summarize everything neatly. So instead of one cohesive story memory, you're left with fragments. Highly accurate fragments, but fragments nonetheless. Now let's explore the real-world impact, the strengths and the struggles. This kind of memory profile shows up everywhere. In a school setting, you can see strong performance in structured subjects and difficulty with rote memorization or vague instructions. In adulthood, it can look like incredible depth of knowledge in passion areas and difficulty recalling mundane or non-engaging information. And socially, replaying conversations in detail and still feeling unsure about what actually meant something. And this often gets misunderstood as not paying attention, not trying hard enough, and being forgetful, when really it's a brain that prioritizes meaning and interest over obligation. Now let's talk practical supports and strategies. These steps might just actually help when your brain remembers everything it cares about and absolutely refuses to store what it doesn't. Now, these aren't about forcing your brain to work differently. They're about trying to work with it. Number 1, linking new information to interests. Now, this one's huge. Autistic memory is often interest-driven, so instead of fighting that, we can use it. If you can connect new information to a special interest, a hyperfocus, something emotionally meaningful, it has a much better chance of sticking. For example, if you love true crime, frame information like a case file. If you're into systems, think of steps, logic, or cause and effect. And if you love stories, turn facts into a narrative. Now, I homeschooled all 3 of my autistic kids, and when I could see stuff wasn't sticking, I linked it all to Ben 10, which was their favourite TV show at the time. If only my human bio teacher could have structured his lessons around the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, my grade could have been so much better. Now, this is why on topics I love, I absorb information effortlessly. But on topics I don't care about, it's like my brain hits a brick wall. The goal isn't to be more motivated, it's to create relevance. Number 2, using visual patterns or stories. Autistic brains often process information visually or structurally rather than verbally. So instead of just reading or listening, try using mind maps, draw diagrams, color code information, create timelines or use metaphors or mental images. Patterns help too. When information fits into a pattern, the brain recognizes it as something worth keeping. And stories give facts context, which is often the missing piece. A dry paragraph might disappear instantly, but a story with characters, emotion, or progression, that sticks. Number 3, writing summaries after conversations. This one is surprisingly powerful if you can do it. Instead of trying to remember everything during a conversation, which is exhausting, let your brain do what it does best after. Once the conversation is over, jot down a few bullet points. Write what you think the main message was. Note any decisions, emotions, or expectations. This helps turn scattered details into a coherent memory. It's not about replaying the conversation endlessly, it's about giving your brain closure. It can reduce a lot of post-conversation anxiety. Now, if you can't do this exercise, it's not a big deal. I have difficulty with it. But for some, it works. Just do what makes you feel comfortable. The next step, though, is what I practice all of the time. Number 4, ask direct questions instead of guessing intent. Autistic people are often expected to read between the lines, but guessing intent takes a huge amount of cognitive energy, and it's often inaccurate. So direct questions aren't rude, they're efficient. Things like, can you tell me what the main takeaway is? What's the most important part you want me to remember? Are you asking for advice or just support? Or if you're like me, you'll just say, I don't get it. Clear answers reduce mental load and improve memory retention. When you know what matters, your brain knows what to store. Now, this one is for the allies and why clarity matters so much. If you're supporting an autistic person as a partner, parent, teacher, or a friend, clarity is kindness. Autistic brains do best when information is explicit, structured, and relevant. That might look like saying expectations out loud, giving written follow-ups, avoiding vague instructions, and explaining why something matters. When clarity is present, memory improves, not because the person is trying harder, but because their brain finally has a clear signal. And just a quick note on strategies. None of these are about fixing autistic memory. They're about respecting how it works. When information has meaning, structure, and clarity, autistic brains don't just remember, they excel. And if something still doesn't stick, that's not failure. That's just a brain with very specific standards for what it keeps. Beyond deficit, a different way of remembering. Now, this isn't a broken memory system, it's a specialized one. Autistic brains remember the world in high definition, but only when the signal is strong enough. When we stop measuring autistic memory by neurotypical standards, we start seeing its real value: depth, precision, insight, and passion. So if you can remember something from 20 years ago in perfect detail, but forget what you ate today, you're not failing at memory. Your brain is just doing what it was designed to do. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I read them all. What's the thing you can remember everything about? And what's the thing your brain refuses to store? And remember, you're not alone and your mind makes sense. As always, thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.